everyone, and welcome to the Limitless Ladies in Leadership podcast. I am your host, Danielle, and I've created a space for the many powerful, creative, and limitless female leaders to share their stories. From female CEOs to professional athletes and doctors, every powerful woman has a story to tell. There's no guarantee where this podcast will take us, so welcome to the unfiltered, unedited, and badass space for all women to align. Let's get started. On the phone with me today is Kaimi Kuoha. Kaimi is the owner and founder of OTHENTIK Gym and is an internationally renowned martial artist. She's also a gymnast, singer, and a dancer. When Kaimi's daughter was an infant, Kaimi was looking for a way to get back into her training regimen, and thus OTHENTIK Gym was born. This allowed a space where mothers could work out with their babies rather than placing them in daycare. Kaimi, welcome!
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And you said my name so well. Good job.
It was so hard. It was funny because I had phonetically spelled it and I had forgotten, and then I was getting to it and I was kind of got nervous on the inside, and I was like, oh, I think I did it.
I think I did it naturally. This is great. Yeah, it's a hard one. It's okay.
The Kaimi part isn't hard. The last name gets me.
No. Yes. If you just pronounce it, it's Kuoha, Kuoha. So Kuoha. But people don't, speak that way. So I guess in Hawaii they do, but not out here.
Oh, man. So before we get into your story, I want to mention that I've been a part of some of your women's self-defense courses, and they are an absolute blast. Not only are we learning something, but they're fun as heck, and we're definitely going to talk about those later in the episode. But first, I want to hear a little more about your story. So obviously your name is Hawaiian. Is that where you're from?
Yeah, originally. But then when I was very young, I moved out to San Diego, and then just kind of moved back and forth for school and things like that. But a lot of family still out in Hawaii, and a lot of family. Actually, I think I have more family out in Hawaii, and just my mom out here in San Diego. So, yeah.
So when did you begin to call San Diego your home?
I was very young. So I was 3-4 years old. I was very, very young when I came out here, and then went back out for schooling. And then was in LA for a little bit. So back to San Diego, but definitely San Diego is what I call home for sure.
Yeah, so I can't wait to dive into the business. But even before that happened, I think when a lot of us see successful women, it's really easy to think that they've always been this way or that they were set up for success. Was that the story for you?
Well, in a way, there was things that were already lined up for me. So career-wise, and this may sound really a little bit backwards, but it was almost like a prearranged marriage. I had a prearranged career already lined up as far as taking over the martial arts system and organization that my father had. And that was, it was deemed to me, I guess, when I was only 3 years old by his instructor, who was Professor William Kwai-Sun Chow. That's actually one of my middle names as well as Kwai-Sun. And so when I was only, I was only 3 years old, and he said I was to take over his system one day. And so, so, I mean, as far as success, I guess already lined up, career wise, it was already lined up for me. And fortunately, I loved it so much that, I continued with it. There was never a point in time where I wanted to take a break. I wanted to keep going and keep training and teaching eventually. So it was already lined up for me. I have since actually I'm no longer in that organization. I resigned and have built my I guess my creation of women's self-defense. I went more towards women than what was normally about 90% men in the organization.
Awesome. And I can't wait to hear about how that gets started. When you mentioned something about being 3, is that when you first started learning about martial arts and practicing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you know what, honestly? So my mom was a first degree black belt. And then, of course, my dad is a 10th degree black belt in the Hawaiian Kempo that I trained in. And so my entire life, ever since like before I could walk, they would do my mom said they'd have the wind up swing, in the dojo. It's aging me a little bit, but you'd have to like wind it up. And so she said I would just sit there and just swing and watch all the training happening. So I think you could say, like, as soon as I came out of the womb, I was, I was learning and absorbing. But for sure, when I could walk, then I was in there training, Yeah, it was definitely a passion, I think, right from the beginning, for sure.
So let's dive into what martial arts actually is, because I think, especially with the over-publicized stuff in America, we see things like UFC, and I think a lot of people understand that that's mixed martial arts, so there's multiple martial arts in there. But let's go back to the actual practice of martial arts and, like, I guess a little bit more of the meaning behind it.
For sure. So for me, and in traditional martial arts, it's less about the aggression and the fighting and more about the self-awareness and the confidence that it brings to deter from fighting or from getting into any confrontation. And I think the awareness is key, and the discipline too, to be able to overcome different obstacles. So I think that's something that is missing a little bit in today's world, and especially in the Western world. It's, you've taken pieces from the traditional martial arts and definitely the fighting aspect of it. But then with the true roots of it, I believe it is, and the true meaning is to hone in on your own self-awareness and your own inner power. And I think we've kind of, fallen away from that. And so I'm wanting to bring that back into a modern world where, unfortunately we're not in a world where we can go into a monastery and stay for years and years and become monks. Right. So we're living in this modern world. We have families and kids and all these different things. And you have to learn how to bring in that self-awareness and that discipline into your life, into your everyday life. So that's what my mission is to bring that into everybody's world, rather than having somebody react so quickly. And I think that's a huge thing too, is that people tend to overreact. We don't think about our actions. And then it brings us into this huge, different world. We're like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Right? You always have those moments of like, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Well, it's because you're not calm enough. You're not breathing. And so that you can actually absorb what's going on. Now, how do I react to it? Right? I think we tend to just spout or react so quickly. So again, these are things from traditional martial arts that I think are just so important in our everyday life.
Yeah, I love that. And that's definitely something that I've been more aware of in myself. And, the kind of natural defense for me that comes up if somebody says something at me or something that I'm offended by or feel the need to correct, right? And there's this automatic response of like, not perceived very well. And so that practice of the pause, and just like you were saying, there's nothing wrong with taking a second to like, okay, let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly before I react.
Yeah. It's so important. I studied something called Aikido, and it's a Japanese art, and it's the art of redirection. And so I love that, because whatever comes at you, you just learn how to redirect the energy. And so that you're not fighting fire with fire, right? And so you're not, and especially I'm only 5'1", like I'm not a really big person. And so you can imagine if I'm fighting somebody that's, 6'2" or something, I come on, going pound for pound, there's no way I would win. But with that circular motion and that redirection, I have all the chance in the world. And especially my center is a little bit lower to the ground. So I have an advantage, right? No, but I think that's true. Like you're saying in life, it's like sometimes people come up and they have so much, especially in today's world, you're hearing it all the time, and people just spout out things. And rather than taking it like it's a blow, to our self-esteem or to our, it's all about how we react and how we feel about what it is, right? About what's coming to us. So we can either absorb it or we can go, nope, I'm just going to redirect it and give it back to you. Here you go. Right. And we can take a different avenue rather than keeping it, it's not ours. And usually chances are the person that's delivering something or saying something that's offensive or whatever it is, they're in a very insecure space, and maybe it's a bad day. I've had that happen. In Israel, actually, is my partner. He's really good at redirecting. I've never seen somebody so perfect at redirecting. I go, oh my gosh, he's awesome at it. I remember we have little Shih Tzus. Oh my gosh. And so he's outside and this guy comes up to him and he says, I hate people with their dogs and they're always walking around with their dogs. He starts yelling at him. And Israel he starts jumping up and down. I had to walk away. I was like, this is so embarrassing. He starts jumping up and down and he's holding our dog, right? Like our little Shih Tzu. And he says, I know. I hate people with their dogs. And and he's screaming. The guy looks at Israel like, oh my gosh, somebody's crazier than I am. And he just walks away like, oh, I don't. And then Israel's fine and he walks away. I go, oh my gosh, but I think a lot of people come to other people and maybe they're upset. They have some insecurity going on and they just want a confrontation, and you can see that. I think especially amongst men, you see, you see that a lot, but just like in that instance, and then you go to their level or whatever it is and you act even crazier and chances are they'll walk away.
Yeah.
But oh boy,
I love that story. That's great. Anyway,
not that's Aikido. It's just I guess that mind frame of, okay, I'm not going to fight you because why? That's silly. Why am I fighting some strangers? It's ridiculous. I'm gonna out crazy you though. Oh,
I love that. And what this actually brings up for me too is in some of the women's self-defense courses that we did together, I remember there was, we were practicing, you were the instructor and Israel was there and he was kind of playing the bad guy, right? And so he would like pretend to attack us. And I remember one of the things where he would like grab our wrist and instead of like fighting against it, like it's kind of the natural human reaction, we would go with his same movement to kind of, push it away and be able to get out. And I was like, wow, this is a lot easier. It's less of a chance of hurting yourself. And it just kind of came naturally. Like the movement was already kind of there. And so it was really cool. It was a different way than I've experienced before.
Oh, for sure. Yes, I love that because too, an opponent, usually they have one direction, right? They're thinking of maybe it's that grab, maybe it's a punch, maybe whatever it is, but they are thinking of that one direction. They're thinking of the person fighting against. Natural reaction, like you said, right, is the fight against it. But then you go with them. And then, oh my gosh, it throws them completely off. I like the analogy of thinking of like tug of war, right? And so what happens if you're like full on playing tug of war and one person lets go? The other person's on their ass, right? And it's because they were expecting the other person to fight them. And so I think it's true for any grab. If somebody's pulling you, to come with me, whatever, you go with them, right? And I always think in my head, and it's definitely a mind shift. I think, oh, okay, you want this? I'll give it to you, right? Okay, I'll come with you. And then instantly they're like, well, you don't want them on top of you. But that's the case, right? And so I always say if somebody tries to invade your space, you take over theirs. And that's a great way, for that technique that you're talking about in particular. If somebody's grabbing, you just go with them and then you finish them off because now they're off their center, they're off balance. because they were expecting you to play that tug of war game. So it's an excellent technique and it's an excellent method.
So I was just picturing that, like if, say I'm the person that's going to be attacked and I'm walking down the street, walking to my car, whatever, and somebody comes from behind and I don't carry a purse, but maybe grabs my arm or something like that, the initial reaction is like pull back. But like realistically, I'm probably not going to be stronger than the person coming after me. And I'm also going to be caught off guard, whereas they're focused. So I was just thinking, like, what would that look like actually going with them, just kind of giving up and I'm not saying going with them forever, but like giving into that. So what's next though? Like if somebody were to grab you and you kind of follow with them instead of pulling against them, then what comes next?
Well, I think even a step before that, I really like to hone in. I was talking about it a little bit earlier, is the internal part of it, right? So the internal energy. This is the key principles, KI. Again, it's a foundation from Aikido as well. And it's really finding that space, being able to breathe in threatening situations. That way you're actually able to make the right decisions in the right moment. And so if we are constantly practicing this internal energy, and everybody possesses it, we just need to learn different drills to strengthen it, and to make sure that we're on it all the time. So taking that step before, maintaining your 1 point, right? We talked about that. That's 2 inches below your belly button, your center of gravity. We always want to maintain our 1 point. Even when we're walking, getting into the car, we always want to keep our breath consistent, right? And I know this is something that is not really talked about because that's life. You don't think about breathing, right? Because it's just natural. You breathe. Yeah. But I think a lot of times people forget how to actually breathe. And so once we start doing more breath work and more, breathing techniques, you have that throughout your entire day. So when you're grabbed, hopefully you're on your center, you're on your 1 point. Yes, you're going to be caught off guard because you don't think every single second you're going to be attacked or grabbed. But then from there, I think you're able to make, again, those right decisions in the right moment. And then you're actually able to apply the movements that you've learned. I always say this too, from we learn, there's a lot of, I think it started from like Taibo. Gosh, it's been, a long time ago, where it's like the cardio kickboxing and and I get a lot of students that come in and they go, I said, oh, have you trained before? Well, yes, I do. Whatever it is, Billy Blank's Taibo class, whatever. You're like, okay. So there's a whole difference, and I think people need to realize that there's a difference from learning all the fancy kicks and strikes and then actually able to apply it, right? And so I always say there's a huge middle ground from A to Z, A actually being attacked and Z actually being able to execute the movements, right? There's that whole middle ground, and that's the key principles. That's where the internal art sets in. And so like you're saying, if somebody is grabbing you, if you're training, right, and we're constantly doing these drills and we're maintaining our center, we're breathing, all of these things, we're staying relaxed in the body, we're able to, from there, actually execute the movements that you learn. And we went into, we go through the striking and learning how to punch, how to kick, how to elbow, how to knee. We do all of that as well, right, in your course that we went through. But the most important part is learning how to actually execute those movements. So with that, yes, if you are grabbed, yes, maintain your 1 point, maintain your center. And that way you're able to do what you're supposed to do. Right.
I'm so glad that we started talking.
There's a ton of scenarios. I mean, but yeah.
No, thank you. And like, for those that are listening, this is like just a small little portion of what Kaimi teaches in her courses, which let's get into that. So I kind of want to know the background of, like, obviously your love for martial arts has been around since you were a child. You had a lot of experience with your dad. But how did that turn from a love into a business for you?
Well, like I said before, like I guess I didn't really talk about it. My father has about, at one point there was like 210 schools or dojos around the world. And so, since a young age, I would go with him because I was like kind of groomed to take over the system. Right. And so, I was, I would go around and travel with him and assist in seminars. And pretty soon I was actually, teaching my own seminars and workshops, in different countries and all over the States. And so, I mean, since really a young age, that was already instilled in me to start teaching. I'm honestly, since probably 12, 13 years old. So you can only imagine come in and being taught by a 12-year-old
yeah.
kid, but, I always felt like I had to prove myself, and that, I was like, oh, I can do it. I was like, oh my gosh, I've gotten to a point where I stopped trying to prove myself so much. I'm like, you get what you get. You don't like it, there's the door. That's all. Right. But yeah, I, definitely had a lot of battles in my younger years. And so, so I think since then it has been something that has transitioned into a business for me. Then as I aged, when my daughter was born, I opened my own commercial school, and it was, I wanted to bring in something. So you had mentioned earlier that I do different, different modalities with dance and singing and all of that. And so I thought, you know what, I have a strong love for yoga and Pilates as well, and fitness. And I wanted to bring it all under one roof. Now we're talking, this was 14 years ago, when I opened my first studio, I guess you would say. And I wanted a space where the moms could train and the kids could train literally like right next door. So in the same building, but they could just look through a big window, and there was their kids training. I thought it was really important to have the simultaneous classes. That wasn't a big thing before. I think now in a lot of MMA schools, they do yoga, they do Pilates along with it, and fitness and stuff. But 14 years ago, it was like, why are you mixing all of these things? And fortunately, I had some really amazing friends and my own instructors from these different modalities that came together with me, and they were like, yeah, let's do it, And so it was really fun. I mean, it was something that I think spoke well to a lot of moms, and it was kind of like a scratch your own itch, type of thing, because I couldn't find anything like that for myself and having a baby at the same time. It was like, oh my gosh, I would have to leave her in a dirty daycare center or whatever, while I'm training, and she's like, screaming and crying the whole time. So I'm like, this is silly. I'm going to create a space where we can both be together and under the same roof at the same time, and training and learning. And I think that builds to, and I've noticed that as the years go by, it has really built up the family aspect. It's people are able to train in different things, because some, maybe martial arts doesn't resonate with some people, and that's okay. But then they have a fitness class going on next door. And so like mom can be in one spot and then kids are in the other, and they're doing completely different classes. But I just think that unity, it really means something. And I've seen the difference in families as they've come through over the years. So yeah, it's been a fun adventure. Speaking of business, gosh, during COVID, we closed our actual space and have now been doing virtual classes and in the park as well. But I think it has really simplified a lot of things for me, and it's really pulled me back out to my why and who I want to teach as well. And I've been really diving into the women's self-defense, which is my first and foremost. That's what I want to do, and that's who I want to teach. So in that aspect, in hindsight, I think it has really simplified, and it has really brought me back to my why and just what I want to do. So I'm excited. I'm actually grateful for that.
Yeah. So let's dive
Despite
into that.
all the craziness that every business owner's gone through. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's dive into that a little more about the whole COVID thing, because obviously, especially as I'm interviewing more and more business owners, I'm hearing very similar stories of like, my business is going okay or well, and it was established, and then something totally outrageous like COVID happens that has a huge impact on the small business. Many people had to shut their doors, and many people became a little more creative and decided to do things other ways. So obviously you were one of those people that was able to still keep some sort of business going. You mentioned having to close your regular doors and doing the outdoor workouts, which are some of the ones that I've attended with you. So I guess just on kind of like that mental note and that whole preparation, how did you make that shift from like, everything's going to well to crap, what the hell are we going to do? And then let's do it this way.
Well, you know what? I don't know what it is, but I don't want to keep putting this out there because I don't want any more craziness, but I do well under pressure. I'm one of those people that I'm like, okay, like, oh, this is it. This is what I have in front of me. And now how am I going to navigate? Right. So there's never a point, and I'm actually grateful for this, that I have this, but inside, whatever it is, and I know you're exactly the same way with this, but it's like whatever you're faced with, you have to just go. Like there's no, oh, well, let me give up and let me, cry myself to sleep about it or whatever. It's like, nope, I got to get up and I got to do the damn thing, And so I really have that part of me, which I'm grateful for. And I'm confident to say, like, yes, I can definitely move when I'm faced with a crisis, I am able to move forward. And if anything, that kind of like, it puts a fire under my butt too. Like, okay, there's only one way and that's up, And so I think for sure that happened with us when that came in. And I was like, I was doing a show actually at the same time when this all happened. I was in I'm also, an actress and stunt and action coordinator. And so I was doing some stunt and action coordinating for a show. And I was also acting in it. And we literally had an opening and closing night all at once. And I was like really engulfed in that, as well as the gym as well. But I wasn't really hearing all of the media and stuff. I wasn't really in it. And then all of a sudden, Israel tells me, he says, I think we have to close the gym. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, I think this is like a real thing. I think we have to close the gym for at least 2 weeks, right? It was like a 2-week curve or whatever. I don't know what it was, but so I go, okay, well, let's close for 2 weeks. And then it just kept going and going and going. And then our landlords were terrible. They wanted us to pay full rent for, a parking lot. And I'm like, this cannot happen. We are not doing this. And so at that point where, as it kept going, I was like, this is ridiculous. We need to keep moving. And literally we went virtual. I think it was a week after. Like a week after it closed, everything closed down. We're like, okay, let's just calm down for a second. And then when things were opening back up, I was like, let's go. Like, we got to do it, And so, I don't know. It didn't really, I don't want to say it didn't affect me. It made me really put into perspective what was real, what we actually needed and what others needed. And you know what? Honestly, every time we kept brainstorming and coming back, it was all about community, especially during this time. I was like, we just need to keep our people together. That's what we need to do, So even if it's virtual, if it's in a park, I don't care. We need to keep that community going, especially for the kids. My goodness, we have a ton of teenagers, and it's just crazy to hear their stories. I mean, you can imagine you're a teenager at this time, and you're trapped inside with your parents. It's like the worst nightmare ever, And so I just keep hearing these stories and I'm like, nope, that's not going to happen to our kids, So maybe we need to do outside sports. I don't know. We brought in Drew Hall, who is a decathlete, and he's going for the Olympics this year also for javelin. And so he's one of our fitness instructors and yoga instructors. And he came on board. He's like, let's do it. I'm going to do sports classes for the teens. At least they can be running and outside and doing something, And so we did. I mean, it's just needed, especially for the mental health and that whole aspect. I think a lot of times people think of fitness as like looking good, right? They always go like, oh, I just want to look good, or reasons to move your body. And that's not the case at all. It has to do with our mental health just as much as our, outer appearance, right? And our internal health as well. But I don't know, especially when I was watching the teens and hearing about all their stories and how they were feeling, I was like this, we got to keep it together. So that was my the motivation for sure when COVID hit. It was like, just keep the community going.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing up the mental health side of things, because I think this part is often left out. And we are seeing, based on the stats that are provided, of course, we don't have 100% information, but during these times, we're seeing alcoholism going up. We're seeing drug use going up. We're seeing obesity going up. We're seeing more counseling, which is great. Like, I always think anybody can do counseling, right? But like, that's a sign that like more people are struggling with their mental health. And obviously we're seeing more violence with some of these riots that we've seen and brutalities, and it's crazy. And I'm not going to say that like, oh, a couple fitness courses would fix all of this, but if people had something that was more that encouraged them better behavior, that got their endorphins going, that got them really creating a purpose, because that was a big thing for me, was like when the gyms got taken away from me. I modified a few things and worked out a little at home in the beginning, but it wasn't the same. And I would stop doing it for a while. And then I'd realize that I would start drinking more than I did before, and I'd start gaining weight. And then that causes a whole extra level of depression. And then it was just kind of this downward spiral that thankfully I noticed before it became too unhealthy. But I started realizing how much harder could that be for people that are in their addiction, that are alcoholics, and like maybe they were sober for some time, and all these kind of things. It's like, this has taken a major toll on people's health.
Yes. Oh my gosh, for sure. I mean, the biggest thing I did with my daughter was I know some people would disagree with this, but I put her in as many courses outside that I possibly could. So she started training with my Kung Fu instructor, and then she started rugby, and she was like one of the only girls in there. But a friend of mine is from All Blacks, and the New Zealand team, and so a bunch of big Samoans, they're always on their off season, they're playing and they're doing camps and stuff. And I was like, he said, I'm gonna still go, I'm gonna still have the kids moving. And he had the same idea as we did, and so I was like, all right, sign her up, I'm putting her in rugby. And that's what she did. It's awesome, but I think that was like the number one thing, was trying to involve her in as much stuff as people would allow, and being outside. I unfortunately, with all of this, and again, this is where the key principles can set in, but fear is instilled. If you look at the media right now, you're not seeing advertisement, and I'm listening to the radio and I'm going, there's no advertisement about what we can do to keep ourselves healthier, right? And that's what's strange, is that, okay, there's nothing that's saying, yeah, get your vitamin D, do the, all of these things that you actually need to do to keep yourself healthy. Instead, it's like they're putting out ads about fear, really, that's instilling fear in people. And I listen and I go, whoa, it is scary. If you just keep on, hearing that over and over and over, all you're getting is that fear injected into you. And I think that's what happened to a lot of people, was that, that fear set in. Is this going to be like this forever? Are we going to be inside and, not be able to see our family and our friends, and all these things set in? And you're exactly right. All the statistics just went skyrocketing of suicides, of everything. And it's just so sad to see it. But I think a lot of it, unfortunately, you have to detach from listening to the big media.
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably not a good thing to say on this, but
no, it's true.
Really, I mean, you start hearing whatever it is, right? Positive or negative. You start hearing that over and over and over again. You start living it. You start believing it. I mean, it's true. It's true about what we say to ourselves. Oh my gosh, so much, right? If we constantly tell ourselves, oh, you're fat, you're ugly, whatever, you start to believe it and you keep on going and going and going. But if you stood in front of the mirror and said, like, I'm beautiful, right? I'm smart, I'm confident every single morning, pretty soon you start living up to the hype and you go, okay, this is who I am. But I don't know. It's scary because there's a lot of it out there and it's getting instilled in everybody. And so I think it takes a lot of strength to detach and go, that's not mine. Whatever is being forced down our throats, that's not for me. That's not mine. And be able to cut those cords because, it's whatever it's there for information, some would say, and also I think, in the past, the media has definitely had an agenda as well.
Yeah.
Right. So there's just differences, but I think we just need to learn how to detach from what we really feel and what's really going on within us and what we can actually do about it compared to what other people are telling or the media is telling us. Right. We have to detach from that. So.
And kind of going back to what you were saying, that like when you repeat something enough, you believe it. Like I'd like to take that even one step further. That's like when you tell yourself something enough times, you tend to believe it and then you tend to be it, right? Like if you keep calling yourself fat, if you keep calling yourself insecure, if you keep telling, this is a thing that I've struggled with in the past, I have a bad memory, that becomes your limit. That becomes the this is what I am, accept it, whatever. And you live that way without being able to go limitless, the name of the podcast. And so it kind of just tied that in for me. And I'm going to kind of shift right here from that. But like we had mentioned earlier, the women's self-defense courses. Now, this kind of ties into what we were just talking about because, the basis of the course is learning physical self-defense, but there's a lot of mental side around it. And there's a lot of positivity that goes with that too, that kind of reinforces those good behaviors. So let's get into those courses. So why did you first decide that you were going to pick women?
So I mentioned a little bit that, the organization that I was with is primarily men. And then there's a moment, there's a couple of things that happened in the organization. And I went, this is not what I want to be a part of, and this is not what I want to stand for, and definitely not what I want to be a leader of. Just because there's just, I guess, for lack of a better word, more of a chauvinistic type of feel, to it. And so coming from that and looking and going, why am I teaching the attackers or the bullies and giving them more tools? Why am I doing this? This is not who I want to be. This is not who I want to teach. I want to completely shift that to people that are statistically the victims, and that's women and kids. Right. And so that's what I did. I resigned and was able to make that shift. And immediately it was I'm gearing this towards women. If you look at it from a business standpoint, women are usually if they're the moms in the family, they usually make the decisions for what the kids eat, what time they go to bed, where they're going to do their sports or their after school activities. And so in that sense, I thought, okay, also for business, it's a good idea, right? To go that way, because then the kids will also be there as well. And I'm not saying that men are not victims at all, because of course, but statistically, chances are a woman it's more prominent that women are raped, and assaulted more so than men. And so that's definitely the avenue that I wanted to take. And also, of course, I am a woman. And so what better way of learning than from a woman, right? There's so many courses out there. And I'm watching somebody and the way that they move. And I go, well, you're a 230-pound man. Of course, you can just sit on the ground and nobody will be able to pick you up. It's easy for you, but it's different. So that the techniques are different, and I'm looking at it and I go, and now I've been taught by men, primarily it's men that are instructing. And so, yes. And I'm not saying that they can't teach or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that it's easier to learn from somebody that you go, oh, I resonate with that person. Mm-hmm. If she can do it, I can do it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you're taught by a female. So, that is my main focus, and my main reason is because first off, statistics. And then secondly, I am a woman. Why not empower women around me, and my community?
And the other thing I really like about having a woman instructor is I trained in mixed martial arts when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and worked for Tap Out and did some stuff with UFC and whatever. And I, at the time, I had two different perspectives. One of it was that I loved working with men instructors because I've always been pretty muscular for my size. So for my height and weight ratio, there weren't a lot of women that matched mine, and I liked the challenge of a man. But what I started noticing happening is that guys it was almost the opposite, that I had this fear that they were going to be almost too rough on me and hurt me. But what ended up happening was that they were afraid of hurting me. And so they wouldn't attack the same way, or they would be in fear of touching a certain body part or something if they were, of course, good guys. And so that I didn't necessarily get the full thing, the whole substance of the class, because they weren't really fighting me how someone would fight me. And then later when I was taking the courses with you, you have the same kind of energy, very, you have the strength, you have the mentality, you have a lot of the things that a guy has, but also there's that level of trust because you're a female. And there's, like you were saying, the way that your body moves and the way that you react to things is very similar to how mine does. So even something as simple as I don't know if I can do this punch because my boob's in the way, or, we all kind of laugh about those things, but it's true.
Yeah. It's most definitely, and also, going back to the mental aspect of it, I am aware of how we're raised too as females, and how our mentality kind of is in threatening situations. People don't understand that, and especially not men. But, we think twice about going in and getting gas late at night, right? Going and getting groceries late. Oh, we got to pick up something. We think twice about it. Guys don't think about it. My partner, he's like, oh, I just need to get gas, right? But for me, it's what gas station? Is it well lit? All of these things go through my head before actually doing it. And people would go, guys would go, why are you even thinking about that? Why would you even? Well, you have to. And that's just a natural thing for us. We always have to think about things like that. And it seems silly, but it's not. All of us do, at some point we look, somebody's looking at us, somebody, you feel uncomfortable, whatever it is. It's always happening. And so I think also having that side of it helps as well. Because I know exactly what we're all thinking. I think it, no matter how much training I've ever had, I always, let me check my surroundings. That guy looks at me silly, whatever it is. He's suspicious. I don't know, but other guys wouldn't think of anything, they just, nothing. It's just different. That's all. And I think that element is really strong though. And it has to be thought of, especially during teaching. There's something else that comes up, and this happens all the time. And I hear it from people is that people go, somebody was just, like at a work party, somebody was just a little handsy and I didn't know what to do. I hear that all the time. They said something, my boss said something inappropriate. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say, because we have this feeling of like that it's our faults instantly. That's our first reaction. What did I do? Oh my gosh. It's like, you didn't do anything. You're just a pervert and you need to stop it, And so there's different techniques that I like to teach that are even de-escalating techniques. So it's not necessarily all just like jab their eyes out and punch them in the throat. It's not like that. It's like your boss says something inappropriate. You're like, ah, oh my gosh.
Kick them in the balls.
But go. But there's de-escalation techniques. Yeah, they got a little handsy. They were drunk at a party or whatever, a Christmas party, and they got a little drunk, whatever. There's different things that you can do to de-escalate the situation. And it always falls back to key principles. You need to learn when to push the gas pedal on and to bring it back a little bit, right? And so again, that just goes along with all the internal arts and learning your own body, having confidence within it, and being able to take control of the situation. And I think that's so, so important. But I hear that all the time as women. I hear that. It's like, oh, I did something. I don't know if I said something wrong. I'm like, you did nothing wrong. You're a female. That's what happened.
Or
right?
the guilt that can...
pair of boobs. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the guilt that can come for me. I'll just speak for myself because I had something happen today that was like, eye roll. So I went to the gym this morning and there's a guy that like, I think maybe I've seen him before, but like I've never talked to him before. And he comes up to me and he's just like, hey, and I have my headphones in. I'm on a machine. I'm trying to work out. I have a limited amount of time. My schedule is crazy. What the hell do you want? Right. But I look at him and I take my headphone out. I'm like, hi. And like in a really like, I'm over it already. What's going on? And he's like, how are you? I'm like, great, man. How are you? And I'm just kind of like brushing him off. Like, I think I'm being overly obvious and like annoying. And he's like, so are you training for a competition? And I'm like, yeah, but and I try to keep my answers real short. Anyway, long story short, he ends up keep talking to me. And although at the end he had asked me, he goes, well, I would love to see you again. I said, well, good news is I'm in this gym about 5 days a week, so maybe I'll run into you again. And he's like, no, I was kind of referring to like outside of here. And I was just like, oh my God. Okay. So, and it's funny because even in that situation, I'm feeling guilty, even though he overstepped in my boundaries and my thoughts are going through my head that are like, what am I going to say that's not going to hurt his feelings? It's like, why the hell do I care about hurting his feelings? He's in my bubble right now and he's disturbing my workout and asking me out on a date. And I'm not even interested in this guy. He freaks me out. And like, I'm sitting here like, yeah, I don't know if I really have time for that. And it's like, what? You know what I mean? Like, that's just one of the things that's like, yes, we need to really get comfortable with that. And I'm not saying you have to be a straight out bitch to everyone, but when someone crosses your own boundaries, it needs to be like, I should speak for myself, more comfortable for me to be like, hey, I really appreciate you, but I'm really trying to get on with my workout right now and I'm not interested. Like, that's it.
Yep. And that's all it would take, and then you feel better about yourself. He got the new, okay. There was no like, oh, maybe next time, maybe next time I'll just approach her again, and try it again because, whatever it was, but something like that would have been perfect. And it's true. We feel bad. Why do we feel bad? You're exactly right. They're in your space. They had the balls or whatever to come over and do that. Well, then we should have the confidence to say what we need to say. If it's a no, if it's a yes, whatever, we have the confidence to say it. And I think that's, and you said it too. I don't want to be a bitch. And that's a huge thing. People, we always go, instead of feeling confident, it's confidence. It's not being a bitch. You're just confident, right? And saying, no, this is what I want. These are my boundaries. That's it. Right. And to the rest of the world or whatever, to some people, oh, she's such a bitch. Don't even walk over there. Don't even look at her. That kind of thing. Why? You're confident. You said exactly what needed to be said. There was no misconception. There was nothing else, and I don't know. It's those kinds of things, but you're exactly right. And we're hit with it all, like you said, this morning. This morning.
Yeah. And
it's like we're all the time.
Yeah. And what comes up for me too is like, as I was speaking and as you're reiterating some of this, I'm thinking, you know what, even if say, I don't currently in that moment have the confidence for some reason to say something, or I'm in fear of being a bitch. What comes up for me that makes it a little bit easier is if I remember that I'm not just doing this for me, I'm doing him a service too, but I'm also doing a service to other women that he may approach in the future. That like, I feel like, yeah, some guys are relentless and they'll just try a million times no matter what. But like some of them do have a certain sense that's like, oh, maybe that was inappropriate. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. And maybe that'll prevent him from being a jackass or crossing somebody else's boundaries in the future. And I almost think it's our duty as women to kind of train men how we want to be treated in a way, where it's like, look, I can set this up for you. And then the next 5 girls that do the same thing, maybe on girl number 6, he'll approach her a little differently or not approach her,
Yep. Exactly. I always say this. I'm like, if there were more superheroes in this world, the villains would think twice about doing anything shady, right? I mean, that's true, though.
Absolutely.
So if more women stood up, and men or, whatever, it's like, if more of us stood up, they would think twice.
Mm-hmm.
They would think twice. They're like, oh, man, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
That last one was unpredictable.
Yeah.
It's
just not
true, crazy. It's true. Using Israel's method, just be a crazy person, and then you'll win every single time. Oh gosh, no.
Oh God. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of this here. I want for those that are listening, especially if they're in San Diego, but you're still offering the virtual courses, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I still have virtual classes and training. I'm also working out a few traveling workshops as well. And so if they have a substantial group of people, then I would definitely be willing to travel out to them as well. So yeah. I have a beginning 4-week course, and then we have an intermediate A and intermediate B, and then an advanced course, and they're all 4 weeks. Or we could do it in a full retreat style where it's like a 4-day workshop as well.
Awesome. So if people are
able to absorb it all.
Yeah. And if people are interested in checking out these workshops or anything else that you're offering, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can reach me on Instagram. I'm at Kaimi Kuoha. They can even online just email. It's kaimi@OTHENTIKGym.com. And there's a website as well, just for the gym. It's OTHENTIKGym.com. So it's OTHENTIKGYM.
Awesome. Thank you. And I will spell those out for everybody.
For sure.
In the description of the podcast as well, because Kaimi and authentic are both spelled a little bit different, but that's Kaimi is Kaimi, and then as Kaimi mentioned, authentic is OTHENTIK. And we'll put those in the description for people to click on as well.
Yeah. And I wanted to add this. There is definitely self-defense. I know it seems, especially martial arts, it's a little bit and people get nervous about stepping in that realm, and they're definitely, I don't want to go into that world or anything, and that's why I have really pulled these courses out, because there's something for everybody, all ages. So many people come in, they go, I've had, this is crazy. One lady comes in, she said, I'm just too old. People are not going to attack me. And I was like, what? Like, it's, I don't know if you've ever seen any of the news before, but it's like all ages.
Yeah.
People don't, that And people don't discriminate. They just go after like anything, right? And so, and what we were talking about, there's so much more than just the physical aspect of it. And there's so many different levels of assault. Just like this morning of people. Yeah, it's not like a assault where somebody's grabbing you, you're in a dark alley, all of these things, right? It doesn't have to be like a horrible, scary movie, but it's just something like that where you go, I just need that confidence to say exactly what I need in that situation. And that's what I really want to promote with the course, is that there is something for your everyday life, not just in these horrible nightmare, situations. There is something, if you're in a car accident, if you're faced with, I don't know, some IRS issue or anything like that, like whatever the circumstance is, you can always apply those key principles and it's going to help you throughout your life.
God, thank you so much, Kaimi. I think that was a really good little ending to everything, because I think sometimes the idea of like quote unquote fighting or martial arts or whatever can be intimidating, especially to women, especially to older women. There's definitely groups that might be intimidated by that. But, and I will say from my own experience too, it's not, it's not like a battleground. We're not sitting there throwing spears at each other. It's very, instructed and well thought out, and, movement is slower, and, we get the chance to interact with other people. It's not the UFC. So thank you.
The spear throwing comes in the third course. Don't worry. No, just kidding.
Yes, I will go to that one. Oh, well, Kaimi, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for everything that you do. I'll list everything in the description, but once again, that's Kaimi, Kaimi. And that's at authenticgym.com for the website. Your Instagram, Kaimi Kuoha. I always say it wrong. Kuoha. Kaimi Kouha. There we go. On Instagram. Just click it. Shit.
Just click it. Never mind.
Just click the thing.
A bunch of letters. Just click it.
Oh, thank you for being here today, Kaimi.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for listening, and we will catch you next time.